All right. I think it is time to start. Please give me a little bit of a thumbs up if everyone can hear and see me well and also sees, most importantly, of course, my screen. Yes, thank you, Horit. Thank you, Isabella. All right, all right. Well, okay, everybody, hello and welcome to our second Speculative Futures event of this year. This time online and also more approachable for our international community. We're really happy you all made it here today. Hopefully well rested, or after a long work day, or even just in the morning. Whatever time it is, we welcome you here today. As for me, my name is Sebastian. I'm tuning in from Berlin today. Even though we've had a few nice springy days lately, yeah, it's getting dark now, and I think it's a bit cold outside. So yeah, just hopefully you are as cozy as I am as in our office today, as can be, I think. But yeah, very happy you all tuned in today to our event featuring global politics, featuring our wonderful speakers, Franziska Müller and Isabella Hermann, who you will hear a lot of today, and we are really happy that they are here today. Before that happens, though, I will also, oh, I'm just seeing someone not unmuted. Yeah, I will also get into the house rules, because this is important apparently right now, how we engage on Zoom today. And then I will talk a little bit about who we are, what we do as Speculative Futures Berlin, but also what is behind this, which is the company called Ellery Studio, where I work. Right. Again, welcome to our two speakers today. They will introduce themselves later and tell you what this is all about, which I have been really excited about, because I also come from the studies of international relations. Of course, sci-fi for everyone, I think, is a big hobby, including myself. And yeah, I'm really excited about this event today. Just a few house rules now, how we engage on Zoom and how we would like this event to go, because you know how it is. Sometimes people unmute themselves, you hear background noises. So in order for us to have a little bit of an engagement together here, and we have a nice event where we don't have any unnecessary disturbances, I would ask you first of all to mute yourself until you speak, if that is fine with you. We love to engage with you and see your lovely faces. So also very nice if you have your camera on, if you feel comfortable with it, of course. No need for that, but if you feel comfortable, we are very happy if you do so. Then if you want to speak, please raise your hand. We have certain periods of the also of the presentation where you are asked to ask questions, basically. But outside of all the engagement, we ask you to please raise your hand if you do so. When you entered the link, of course, I think you heard a little bit of this Zoom lady's voice, where the recording is in progress. So we are recording this event also for the people who cannot be here today and want to rewatch it later on YouTube. This is a bit of the information of the Zoom engagement, and now I want to get into who we are and what we do and where we come from as Speculative Futures Berlin. On this slide, you see three logos here. The first one on the left is the Design Futures Initiative, which we as Speculative Futures Berlin belong to in that sense, because this is a global initiative or a global network of Speculative Futures chapters, where where many cities, I think over 80 around the world are represented as Speculative Futures chapters. And we are very proud to say that we are one of the largest chapters in Europe. I like to say sometimes that we are the largest, but you know how it depends on whatever. Follow us here, follow us there. So anyway, we are really happy if you tune in today, even for the first time. We always enjoy these kind of events and bringing in wonderful speakers and having a nice interactive time together. What's behind? I already teased that on a bit in the beginning. What's behind Speculative Futures Berlin is the company Ellery Studio, and I would like to show you a little Giphy that we made lately today. Of course, not all of them are here, but I'm here today, as I said, Sebastian, and I'm supported and very happy that he's here today with me, my colleague Dominic. Maybe you can wave. I can't see you, but perhaps the others can. Very happy he supports me today, and will also look out for the technical issues, letting you all in, and hopefully also we'll have a good time during the workshop. So yeah, this is us at our last but how do you call this? We did a boat trip on the Spree in Berlin, and had a nice barbecue, and enjoyed a couple of cold drinks. You can see it was already pretty cold, so I think it was September, so we had some jackets, but the drinks were still cold, and that was nice. So yeah, skip one. What do we do? This is us, Ellery Studio. What we do is we have these three. We always call it a three-piece of how we approach our work. The first one is anticipating or anticipation, where we do futures research based on most of us in our team are futurists, and we want to talk about how we approach the future, how futures affect us, and also how it affects the present. That is one of our main characteristics of our team. In the second instance, we want to understand what we talk about and how we anticipate, and we do this by translating science and complex topics into easy to understand infographics and appealing design. So the design process is not only basically a service in the end where we want to make things pretty, but it's more of a transformation design, as we like to call it. So we have we are part of the understanding of how design approaches or influences the process. In the third instance, we also like to get into the doing part, which is also, I think, the spearhead of what you have here today with Speculative Futures Berlin. We support companies in transformational and participatory formats, where we design workshops, we conclude research, and we try to always to work with different target groups and make approachable formats for various variations of target groups. Here's a little bit of an overview, maybe a bit much for you to read right now, but there's certainly time for you to get in touch with us if you want. Some of our links will be posted in the chat or have been already. But here are some of the things that we engage in, and a little bit of this three-piece of what I talked about with the anticipation, the understanding, and the action or the doing part. Okay, then let's get back to the topic at hand. Today, of course, Speculative Futures Berlin, as a little bit of an explanation of how we approach our chapter of Speculative Futures. You see here a small graphic which we like to use to explain our approach. Most of the time, as I have already said, and as we are all futurists, you can think, you may guess that we are approaching it from a future studies perspective, where we get into not only trend consulting or things like scenario research, but we want to really also open up visionary futures and speculative futures, and then on the other hand pair these approaches with design and how we use, for example, design thinking and critical design, how to accompany processes and how to create an environment for different target groups. As a last thing from our side, you can connect with us anytime you want. There are certain opportunities: Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, Meetup, as some of you have joined us today. But also, I want to emphasize that we are always open for suggestions or topics where we can maybe arrange an event, or you think you can maybe arrange an event with us. So please approach us on this email down below, info@speculativefutures.de, and we can get in touch and maybe talk about you organizing an event such as this one with us. Most of the time we are in our studio with our events. That is that being in Berlin, Kreuzberg, where we host events, but for of course our growing international community, which some of you of course also belong to. It is very important for us to also do these online events, and that's why it came in really handy that also Franziska is joining us, not from Berlin today, and she is located in the UK, where she is a professor in international relations, and she engages in sci-fi, and not only future and global politics, but also as a sci-fi nerd. So I'm really happy that she's here today. Her partner today is Dr. Isabella Hermann. She is she is located in Berlin, but still has been lately very much an acquaintance here at Ellery Studio, and we really love to have her here today. She's not only a board member of the Stiftung Zukunft Berlin, but also organizes a sci-fi film fest, and is co-author also of the book they're gonna introduce to us today. All right, I think this is enough for me, and I will give up to Franziska and open the floor for this workshop.
Yeah, good evening also from my side. I'm very happy to be here. Very small correction. I'm here in Brighton as a fellow, but my professorship is in Hamburg. So that's the place where I'm normally located. So I'm not so far away from most of you, except our co-author, Ronnie, who is beautifully though joining us from Santa Cruz, as I've just seen. I think Isabella and I will just say a few more words about ourselves and our motivation to fall prey to the beauties of science fiction, and then we will quickly present the book and give you a glimpse of two of the stories that we've written for the book. Then we will have a Q&A, and then we will start with the interactive part and get you all on a kind of quantum encounter. Yeah, so maybe just a few words about myself. I'm working in global climate politics and all things Anthropocene, and I grew up with space opera science fiction, but then in the last years turned towards feminist sci-fi, climate fiction, and also African futurism. And to me, intertwining sci-fi and global politics seems an almost natural connection, because science fiction allows us to think so much about to think beyond boundaries and to use our collective imaginary to create near futures that are just a glimpse away from today's realities. And in a world so full of crisis and despair, I think it's very important to also be open towards science fiction, because that opens pathways for moving beyond the draining realities and think of different ways of dealing with crisis, be it feminist futures or ecological dystopias, more than human futures, or even solar punk futures. Okay, so far from my side, Isabella, what made you so happy about doing and writing science fiction?
I think I'm socialized with science fiction via Star Trek, The Next Generation. And I was always so fascinated by how politics worked there, and Captain Picard, you know, being such a thoughtful diplomat and stuff. And I think this maybe was kind of the reason why I studied political science in the end, and had then my focus on international relations or global politics. And of course, what always interested me most was not how the warp engine works or the transporter system works, but like how a society works in a post-capitalist setup, maybe. So it was always the socio-political that interests me most in science fiction. And now, you know, step by step, I achieved working now as an independent science fiction analyst and researcher, which is actually my dream job, so to speak. But I really see science fiction not so much an undertaking to have a look into the future, but really a tool for reflection and a commentary to the present. And this is what I think is so fascinating. It lies somewhere, you know, between maybe real forecast, I don't know, and also metaphor on the other side. And this is what makes it so super fascinating, in my view. And with that, I give back to Franziska.
Yeah, great. So we're already in a kind of conversation on why it makes so much sense to write science fiction, even if you're not science fiction authors. So I'll just share my screen and say a few words about our book. Yeah. So this on the right hand you see the title of our book, which was just issued in the early days of January. And we were so happy to even get reviews from Kim Stanley Robinson and from Robin Eckersley, so both with a political ecology focus and also with a renowned science fiction focus. So just a few words why we were actually doing this and why Laura Horn, Aja Mert, and myself came across the idea to doing this kind of mock handbook. Well, we developed the idea to create this handbook of global politics in 2100 as we were reflecting about our discipline, international relations and international politics. And looking at international relations, a number of anachronistic but also futurist features seemed remarkable. There's a broken trust in global cooperation, and then there's also trust in techno-fixes that enhance or even sometimes replace human cooperation thanks to benevolent algorithms. But then there's also hope for radical and more than human encounters and also for a notion of care. And this all is very visible in the concept of the Anthropocene, the first man-made geological age, a time where the Earth's atmosphere is changing, ocean currents are changing, and the sixth great extinction is taking its toll. And in a nutshell, we find all the ingredients of a nice dystopian sci-fi adventure here. And still, in this age, we found there's just the right time to look at these fears and desires from a more remote perspective. The time span around 2100, marking the 200-year anniversary of international relations as a scientific discipline. So what we did in the book is we engaged in a kind of quantum experiment that beamed us all to the year 2100, creating a multiverse of visions and fantasies that imagine global politics. We have a few assumptions. So we, for instance, believe that there still will be global politics and that there will be something called academia with academic conventions like book format, language, reading, understanding, scientific audiences. And what we do in the book is we have an edited collection of essays that write the futures of global politics on the basis of a wide range of theoretical perspectives and approaches. And we do so in a future antérieur style. That means we imagine what would have happened in the year 2100, what would have taken us to this very point. And this means that we also wonder how global politics have developed as a historical phenomenon. We look back at the rise and fall of the thought collectives, of the mindsets, of the theories, and of the conflicts. And in the book, we mirror the format of existing handbooks. We combine outlines and discussion of theories. We combine this with an academic science fiction account on how this would play out during the course of the next century. And so it's not so much about future and prognosis, but it's rather a form of backcasting exercise. We start in the year 2100 and we look back at the different developments and we wonder how they might have occurred and how they might have led to the status quo in the year 2100. And of course, what we also want is to invite our readers to reflect on how thinking about the future has become an increasingly radical, but more than ever necessary act. So here is a short glimpse at the table of contents and other recurring themes and topics. I won't go too much into detail because table of contents can be a very boring thing. Some of our authors are, of course, wondering how science would look like in 2100, like what are the typical rituals and practices of academia in the year 2100, how have theories developed and how they are debated and taught in those days. Then we are also looking at a classical topic of international relations, security and insecurity. We're wondering how security has unfolded, what kind of strategic partnerships we can find, also how troubles of nuclear weapons have developed so far with arms control or maybe not so much control, and also how the concept of diplomacy has evolved. Then we're also wondering how governance and technology are like. Some of our authors are thinking about the concept of the world system and what we understand as Europe and how this concept may have changed. Then Peter Christoph and Aisha Mert are wondering how democracy after the Anthropocene has evolved and how it has become a more than human enterprise. And also Ronnie Lipschitz is reflecting on how planetary algorithms regulate the environmental sphere and how nice governance by algorithms might be, and to what extent this does away with political hierarchies. Also, Anthropocene politics play an important role. Some authors are wondering how today's hydrogen revolution has played out. Others are wondering how degrowth in the Mexican Zapatista villages is a veritable solution to late capitalism's problems, and others are wondering what well-being may mean and how well-being could be quantified thanks to algorithms. And we end with a more theoretical reflection on political theory in the year 2100, as far as we can imagine that. Yeah, how and why are we doing this? Why are we a bit mad and crazy about this? And what brought us there? Here, please allow me for a quick meta-theoretical excursion. And as Isabella and I have already pointed out when starting, we don't just speak about the future because we are so dedicated science fiction aficionados. Rather, over the years, our joy in science fiction has acquired a deeper, darker, and maybe more radical sense. We take future as a method. Future as a method means that we use the critical distance that science fiction offers us also as a way to reflect from a more alienated perspective on today's injustices, ecologies, and disasters. And this allows us to move beyond a mere extrapolation of parameters, as it would normally be done by political science or by any prognosing discipline. And rather, what we do in the book is a kind of radical cut. We engage in backcasting, and future antérieur means that we already imagine ourselves in a kind of multiverse of future, only to wonder how things have developed and what actually brought us here. So this may sound like a kind of mental gymnastics, but it is our way of futuring and taking future as a kind of method. So not as a status, but something that allows us to escape the temporalities and their limiting powers. Yeah, and more so, we are not doing that from out of nowhere, but rather this sci-fi exercise that we are so passionate about resonates much with our roles as researchers, activists, carers, and dreamers. And when I say that, this means that every one of us, at least in our authors, editors collective, plays all four of these roles, and this is also why we find it so important to think about scholarship and what it means to be a researcher. Very much our roles as researchers, scholars, activists resonate with what the late Bruno Latour calls the earthbound people. He is a scholar who has engaged very much with the concept of the Anthropocene and what that means also to the human condition. And he portrays earthbound people as a collective of people who consider themselves sensitive and responsive because they are being bound by and to the earth. And that means that our role as scientists does not allow us to be in a distant position, but we're always bound to the ecosystems that we shape, enjoy, and destroy. And in this kind, we need to be more reflective about our role and also critical about our role as activists. And this also means that we consider ourselves dissident in academia, unruly in international politics, orderly structures, but also uneasy with social movements. Yeah, so far from my side as a quick glimpse into our ideas for the book. I'll just put some information on the book in the chat, and then I'll just hand over to Isabella to share her story.
So yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think you can go on with the next slide.
Yes.
Thank you. So now you have the theoretical outline. So now we go on with a bit more beef that you can imagine a bit better what we actually did. So I will present my contribution to the book, and after me, Franziska will also shortly present her story, because we have two quite different styles, which I think makes it quite interesting. So the headline of my story is the UN Corp Quantum Mechanism for Well-being, quite technical. And from the headline, you can already guess a bit what's going on. So we have now United Nations Corporation. So corporations have become as powerful as states, or maybe they are already. So now they're incorporated in the United Nations. There is quantum in the title. So there were leaps in quantum computing. So politics is now steered by quantum algorithms. And we find well-being here. So politics is oriented towards well-being. So, this gives you a first glimpse what's going on. Getting to the next slide. A bit more in detail what happened in this world I'm building, just to give you some imagination about that. So in the mid-21st century, there were global upheavals, due to climate change and the according ramifications. So the United Nations actually fell apart. But then they were revived, as the United Nations and corporations. And this new institution agreed that the political aim, the global aim, should actually be well-being. So not growth anymore, not sustainability, but well-being on the individual side, state side, and for the planet. So at the same time, we had leaps, major breakthroughs in quantum computing. So the UN Corp High Commissioner for Quantum was founded, and this was actually done because now it is very popular to have algorithmic policy making. So politics is actually done now automatically by algorithms, because this new quantum computing is so powerful that now it's possible. Now we have the well-being program as goal of the policies. We have quantum computing. Now those two bodies merged to become the UN Corp Quantum Mechanism for Well-being, so that the automated policy making is oriented towards the so-called well-being gateways. So we have a global policy that makes well-being possible by algorithms. And this is called the algorithmic global Pareto optimization. That is the world as it looks like. Next slide, please. And there's also quite easy to understand illustration. So, I mean, you see, it's absolutely logical. It's proof. Great. I think you already got it, what it means, right? So next slide, please. So in my article itself, in my contribution for the book, there are now 4 parts. The first one is a forward to the 30th issue of the Human Wellbeing Report. Now there are those wellbeing reports. It might remind you maybe of the Human Sustainable Development Report by the United Nations right now. And there's the forward of the first co-director. And in fact, with this Pareto optimization, world looks actually good. There is no hunger anymore, no misery. People can decide how their life should be. You live until old age. It looks actually quite good. And I quote now the first co-director. I mean, she's not in charge anymore, but she says, 31 years ago, in 2090, the UN Corp Quantum Mechanism for Wellbeing created a new way to further improve global well-being. Since then, we have automated the international coordination of individual countries' algorithmic well-being policies to achieve the algorithmic global Pareto optimization. End of quote. So you might guess, this is a bit tech solutionist, technocratic. She really believes in tech fixes. And yeah, let's see if there might be other perspectives. So coming to the next part, the second part of my article, which is then a comment to this whole 30th issue of the Human Wellbeing Report by an activist group called Real World Against Modeling. So you might guess they are not so tech solutionists. They not really believe that social life is only data and you can model the real world. So the problem, in fact, is that even though super powerful, those quantum algorithms for the human well-being, they are not fair and neutral as claimed. They also have been trained by data, and the data was also biased. So maybe the world looks good now, everyone's well off, but is it really fair? Who knows? And the system is also intransparent, so you can't actually dive into it and look how the algorithm is built. So a quote of this activist group: "The Pareto optimum algorithm is opaque and invisible like a god, and its verdicts are beyond dispute or appeal." Yeah, could be a critique. So, but it gets even further. The critique gets further. We have also a digital world. It's called the sphere. The whole idea of the metaverse collapsed in the 2050s, 60s, but then new virtual worlds appeared. And then there was a big global standardization process, and now it's all interoperable. And of course, there are interlinkages with the real world, but funny enough, it's actually a parallel world that exists in the digital realm. And do the well-being gateways, the well-being goals really apply in this world? Not really. So Sphere Watch criticizes this whole well-being report. It's a nonprofit research and advocacy institution. And they say parts of the sphere have become areas of intellectual, psychological, and sexual exploitation, bypassing all efforts put in the well-being gateways. So, you know, people also say maybe this was a deal between the political side and the corporations to make more money in this perfect well-being Pareto optimized world. Who knows? But it gets even further. We have also colonies on Mars, but not real colonies. It's like martial law colonies. So there are alliances from Earth, and they just fight wars for the sake of fighting wars. And a whistleblower working in the space exploration program leaks the information because it's all quite opaque. Nobody really talks about it. Nobody wants to communicate about it. But the person says Mars has become a valve to vent tensions on Earth. Mars is an adventure game of peace board nations. So who knows, maybe we are not made for peace. We need the Mars, the ongoing Mars, martial law on Mars, yeah, to have a way to compensate the well-being on Earth. So in that sense, so the major question in the end, this is also my last slide then, is this future utopian or dystopian? And of course, this story, this contribution to the book could be the starting point to have a deeper discussion about that. But I had my own reflective process, of course, while writing this thing. And obviously, it's not a foresight, it's rather a commentary to the present. And it also makes fun, you know, about this whole rhetoric and wording of the United Nations. It is a mockery about this whole metaverse, Elon Musk, Mars colonization program. But what I found out, actually, it's not cynical. So it doesn't mean that, you know, no matter what we do and how good the intentions, it will always end badly. So it's rather the opposite, that there always will be and always actually have been negative side effects to new political programs, to new ideals, to development. But we also have then again to deal with the negative side effects and still make it better. So in fact, it's always an ongoing fight to kind of make it better. And maybe this is for me the key point of the story, but maybe for others it's quite different. So I'd say the future in the story, or maybe the future in general, is anti-dystopian. So with that, I return to Franziska to give an idea of her contribution. Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks so much, dear Isabella. So my future is a completely different thing. Yeah, my story is not a scientific article, because I'm writing scientific articles all the time. So I thought, okay, please no more footnotes this time. And my contribution is rather a script of a video documentary that will have been broadcasted in the year 2100, and it celebrates the anniversary of a new international organization, the B7cc Council, which came into power in the years of the anthropocentric purge, a time when climate change took its toll, resulting in absolute turmoil and a devastating number of humans and non-humans dying from heat, distress, water scarcity, drought, and resource wars. And in that video documentary, our interviewer speaks about resource wars and green geopolitics and describes how the anthropocentric purge happened as a state of violence, a state of flight, and a state of trauma. Next slide, please. Next slide, yeah. So our interviewer first addresses resource wars and how the run for rare earths like silicium or lithium resulted in all the new power games in remote places, but then also addresses climate migration and how the international community once again failed to address the refugee situation, except some shiny small-scale solutions. Think of, for instance, of a weak competence-based resettlement regime locating people from Maldives, Nauru, and the Caribbean in Chile, Antarctica, and Greenland. Also in those days, the consequence of climate change became visible in new forms of hurricanes, the hypercanes, which so far had only been hypothetical weather events, but as soon as the oceans have reached a certain temperature, these hypercanes can last much longer than hurricanes and have even more devastating effects. And the last condition he talks about is the state of trauma that translates to a condition called collective ecological traumata, or CET, a mix of generational guilt, hopelessness, and extinction-related grief that struck many people, especially people in Western nations who, due to their built-in trust in technological fixes, were so much affected by CET paralysis. Bearing this in mind, our interviewer is in the video documentary also quite shaken themselves, but then visits several of the B7cc leaders in Nigeria, Iran, and California in order to ask them to tell their stories, how the B7cc Council developed and how cooperation then started to work again. So next slide, please. Here we are having an interview with Rayova Adebayo in the Lagos Laguna and in a beautiful floating quarter. And she tells us the story about the B7cc Council and Afrocentric norms. And actually, the B7CC Council formed as a kind of grassroots organization based on activist groups not occupied by the Western embassies battling for climate refugee status. They're calling for random Ubuntu, and random Ubuntu was based on the old Southern African norm of Ubuntu, called, translating to I am because you are. So that's a deep sense of deep felt solidarity, not for a concrete individual, but for a random one, imagined one, somebody we may probably never know, but who is as needy as oneself and should enjoy the same right to a safe climate and an intact environment. And in a later stage, random Ubuntu was expressed in computer algorithms that suggested seemingly random pairings on a communal level, and placing communal settlements in order to show solidarity and help each other. And here, for instance, the Lagos Emirates partnership formed, and also the Johannesburg-Lusaka Twin City network. Next slide, please. One click more, please. Thanks. Yeah. So then our interviewer takes us to Iran, to Shireen Mazandarani, who is located in the north of Tehran in the beautiful Alborz Mountains. She tells us about how the Ubuntu norm was localized and how the Ubuntu norm materialized in a beautiful social practice, which in the end became totally revolutionary due to the severe water scarcity and climate change. Water vendors became once more important again. And everywhere in Tehran, they were selling water in reusable cups in the streets, and people started to share the precious liquid between rich and poor, Muslims, Jews, atheists, and Christian women, men, and trans people. And here, the cup became a symbol of radical social change. And this cup symbol became also a kind of expression of random Ubuntu, and it created new social relations amongst all social classes, and changed very much about the ways in which people thought about one another. And it also meant that in the end, the mullahs, who were so closely and kleptocratically connected to the oil industry, fall prey to their own stranded assets. And in the end, in the 2050s, a solar democracy plot happened, based on solar panels secretly placed in Iran's largest desert, the central Dasht-e-Lut, where nobody would have thought that the solar revolution could happen. And next slide, please. And lastly, our interviewer travels to Oceanside, meeting Scott Garcia, a member of the Lagua band of Luiseño Indians, speaking about the foundation of the Califonian nation, the former states of California and Colorado were not so much affected by the anthropocentric purge, but in the years afterwards, they were experiencing large flows of migrants from the US Midwest, because in these areas, many people had believed the preachery of doomsday evangelists who denied climate change. So they had kept on exploiting the earth until the soil had lost all fertility, and then people again, as 200 years before, started moving west. However, they were not met with open arms, but rather the leaders declared that they could not accept any more climate migrants, and only opened the doors to those who would give some genetic or hereditary proof of belonging to some Native American nation. Because the Californian nation is very much based on a strong condemnation of settler colonialism, as this was perceived to have caused all these ecological evils. However, this is quite, as you may imagine, a violation of the strong Ubuntu norm, and especially of the random Ubuntu norm, and this has led to quite some tension within the B7CC Council, because this very strong stance pro-Native Americans and counter-settler colonialism brought much turmoil, because this was not really regarded as a sign of solidarity, but others could very much understand how the Californian nation acted in that regard. Yeah, and last slide, please. Yeah, and as this is a handbook, Of course, also this video script comes with some didactical features, and all the readers are asked to resonate a bit more on the random Ubuntu norm and wonder which facet and potentials one could identify. Also, people are invited to think about how a solar democracy could thrive, and also whether the activities of the Californian state are ethically justifiable or not. Yeah, so far from my side. Anyone who comes across the book, please enjoy the read. And we have seen that in the chat very much has been happening. I don't know what exactly, but we now have time for a quick Q&A, and please ask anything that you are interested, either in the chat or just by raising your hands. We will moderate, and I guess Dominic and Sebastian from Ellery Studios will support us a bit in the moderation. And after that, we have a more interactive phase, and we'll take you into some kind of quantum interactive encounter.
We had like some interesting questions in the chats. For example, Justin Solis asked if you would consider your book an example of an artifact from the future.
Yeah, I think I can take this if that's okay, Isabella. Yeah, that's a very beautiful way of putting it, and I would say, yeah, 100%, because we believe that the different chapters have been brought to us via kind of quantum exercise. And this is even visible when you look at the book, because in the book you will, when somebody looks at the pages, and especially at the bibliographies, you will see that there are many, many quotations of articles that will have been written in the next years to come, sometimes even from well-known political science authors, where we are very sure that there's important pieces that will have been written in the year 2031 or 2070 or so, and this even adds to the artifact quality. Also, a short anecdote: when we came up with this idea of fake quotations, which will of articles which will have been written in the next decades, we had we entered really interesting discussions with our publisher Palgrave, to whom we are otherwise very, very thankful for doing the whole publishing process so smoothly. But this was the point where Palgrave was really, really skeptical and was saying, wow, you cannot come up with fake quotations. What will happen when people cite these articles, and what will happen if these articles even apply on Google Scholar profiles and are quoted even more, if these are articles who are not even existing? How will you deal with that? And in the end, we could convince the publisher to keep the fake quotations and the fake references, but we were asked to mark them with a little quantum sign. So there is a little Greek symbol to classify all those references of which only will have been written in the years to come.
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Hi. Thank you so much. Isabella, I would be super interested in how the model that you sketch out on this UN called quantum well-being measurement thing, the whole like algorithmic system about that. I was very reminded of like new models of democratically planned economies that are currently being worked on, and like how this sketch like differs from that. And I think that that's like a super interesting avenue to explore. Like, are you familiar with these kinds of models in any way?
So I'm not really a computer scientist or something like that, but I worked some time on a research project on AI. And, I have some basic knowledge and I followed the discourse. But in fact, I developed this story, I think 3 years ago. And I think the discourse you're mentioning just kicked in, right? Like the last 2 or 3 years. So yeah, I don't know. It is, of course, a reference to that. But it was, rather a thought experiment. I think at that time, I haven't read so much, about those new economic modeling of democracies, for example. So sometimes it's these coincidences, right? That you think, oh, interesting. So have I meant that? I don't really know, but I think it's maybe a bit of, yeah, zeitgeist thing that things like that come up, if that answers your question.
It does. It's kind of the present catching up with the future, kind of like.
Yeah, maybe.
We've had a few more questions about the book and the publishing process itself. There was one from Peter who asked, how did you select your publisher? Is there a certain special process to it that you applied, or maybe you can get into that a little bit?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's always a range of academic presses to which you can apply. Bestseller are always the university presses, but they are often not so prone to do edited volumes, and at least not something so edgy and nerdy, I would say. And then Palgrave has a strong reputation in handbook series. So our idea to have a mock handbook fitted very well into their overall handbook line. So we thought that our book could sneak in between all the real handbooks and make some noise and disrupt some debates about how to do a handbook. Yeah, and yeah, so that was basically the idea. And then somebody has also asked why the book is so expensive. Yeah, I'm also really sorry about the pricing. This is nothing that I can do anything about. Unfortunately, most academic books are very expensive because they are not produced in so high quantities, and many publishers prioritize hardcover copies, and only later, when the book sells really well, come up with soft covers. So this is something that we cannot do so much about, but of course, when you write us an email, we can send you an ebook version.
Seems like everybody's satisfied with it. So Isabella, Franziska,
Yes,
do you want to
seems
initiate
like
the
it.
phase?
So I just quickly share. There we go. So now we thought we're going to do a 20-minute breakout, you know, to have some practical experience, and also because you're coming, as I saw, from all parts of the world. So you could also have, you know, a networking event in this breakout sessions. So we prepared 3 different questions from the future, and we have one question for each group. Each group will contain around 4 persons, and it's a random assignment, so you cannot choose your peers or the questions, which makes it actually more fun. And there's also a Miro board. So have you shared the link already in the chat? So maybe you can open it up right now, because I think when you go to the breakouts, then the link is gone. I mean, we can post it again, but if you see the link in the chat, just open it up and you can use it if you like. So you will find a certain number, which is your group number, and there you will also find the questions. And if you want to write something down or have some pictures, or just for the group to get you organized, please use it as you like. We thought it's just cool to have a tool where everyone has access and you can work together. So the 3 questions we prepared is first, imagine the lives of your grandchildren in the year 2100. So, you know, it's not exactly 100 years in the future, but around. So what would they write to you in a letter? So this first is a more about kind of daily life, right? How would life look like? But you can frame it as you wish within your group. The second is, how did humankind manage to handle the climate crisis? Who received the future Nobel Prize and why? So we thought some kind of Nobel Prize might still exist because it's now over 100 years old. So when we think in the future, it still could be there. So this might be the bit more political, social, economical question, but again, as you like to frame it. So, and what do people in 2100 love most about their jobs? Give some job advice to your co-workers in the present of now. Yeah, this is speaks more to the professional life. And I don't know if there are any urgent questions right now. I guess it's quite clear. So we just kick you in the breakouts for 20 minutes and get back, and then we can have some answers and what you discussed in your group. So have fun.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Advice to COVID, don't be.
Hi. Seid ihr schon gut dabei? Is everybody speaking German or English?
Well, we just started in English, I think. I don't know, vielleicht können wir auch alle Deutsch reden, ich weiß, but I don't think so.
All right. Are you already in the Mirabout?
Yes.
Yeah.
Which group did you take? Like which?
We took number 6, I think.
Yeah.
Let's go to
The advice for the co-workers in the present.
Right, to just keep trying new things, don't be boxed in. Yeah.
If it's all right with you, I would share my screen so it's on the recording what we do in the Mirabout.
Yeah.
I maybe would have another tip. It's like,
yeah,
don't like, no, as an answer, like, don't get too invested into like content creation skills. In 10 years, AI will overtaken everything of that.
That's like, interesting, because I just wanted to put down, be a generalist, right? Like, you know, like be good at everything and don't focus too much on a special thing. So maybe
so sorry, I just jumped in. I don't want to irritate you or anything.
Hi, Isabella.
Hi, Tatjana. I know Tatjana. And thanks for your question, Eric. So, but
Eric, what was that? What you said? Don't focus on. So don't focus on any special skills, right?
No, it was specifically content creation skills, okay. Like media content creation, like stuff that's like popping like very much hype at the moment, but like in 10 years, nobody will want that anymore whatsoever.
So I put down, don't focus on content creation skills, and in brackets, AI will take over. Is that all right?
Yep.
Okay.
Isabella, I'm sorry, you wanted to like answer the question I put in the chat, right? But maybe you can answer the question like in the chat or as like a direct message or something.
Oh yeah, I have to look at the chat, but I will. I can't do multitasking, so you know when I speak, Ellery took care of the chat, but I will have a look right now.
I don't know if it's in this chat right now, if it was in the chat before, of like the
yeah.
Okay.
So do you really think AI will take over?
Not
sorry.
Not in like the generous, but like in the with regards to like content creation, like with regards like everything in regards to like posting video stuff, like at least like less and less skills are gonna be needed for that. Like yeah, I'm very sure of that.
So I tried out ChatGPT for doing my work for the freelance job I do, and it worked. So maybe it should be necessary to ban ChatGPT now. So it's an advice from the future. It's all beginning. It's a starting point now for people who work on thinking or have new ideas. So
that would be the advice from 2100 for now. Ban ChatGPT.
Yes.
Now, do it now.
Be careful.
Yeah, it's also funny because the Palgrave, the publishing house, they were so afraid that the fake references people think they are real or could become real or whatever, and ChatGPT does, you know, just fake references all the time. And
yeah.
I think I would also, with like I put down be a generalist, but I would also say an advice would be to invest into skills that have to do with sort of like human to human relations. But now that you said ban ChatGPT, I would also say like invest in skills with like machine and human interaction. So, but you know, it's not about, I think what I'm trying to get at is it's like, I think future skills are in both ways, like the machine and human communication skills in a way, and not so much any knowledge related skills or knowledge itself. What do you guys think?
I think the overall question we should ask ourselves is like, are we giving ourselves advice to like, oh, this is how the world of work will look in the future. Do this so you have like the best position in it, or is it one that like kind of like a matrix kind of like position of like, no, the world of work of the future sucks. You have the chance to change it. There's still time. This is the chain of events that led to that world of the future. You have to do some things differently with the tools at hand, and therefore that this world of work of the future doesn't even emerge in the first place. Like, what approach do we want to have?
I mean, like the question is, what do people love most about their jobs? So I think the assumption there is that it's not terrible, that there must be like some sort of ray of sunshine in there.
Okay, good point. Good point.
But yeah, but this is something which is open, right? If we say the future might be dystopian and we give now advice that it won't be that future, or maybe it is a desirable future, and we can give advice to do exactly what is needed to get there. Depends. If it is a positive or negative outlook.
Well, I think you can always be like, what do we do so we don't get into like this bad social situation? Or how do we personally deal with that bad social situation? So do we have like a global perspective, or like trying to change everything? Are we just saying, okay, that's how it is? How do I deal with this as an individual?
It's getting so small what I'm writing.
So what does not mandatory mean? Is there kind of a general basic income?
Yeah, I think I put that down. Yeah, I thought like I rather thought that working in itself is not mandatory, like to cope with, you know, well, not to cope with life, but to make a living in a way, right? To be able to live in our societies. So yeah, in a way there should be some sort of like social, I don't know, let's call it welfare system. But yes.
That like the fundamental idea maybe is that it's not anything specific and anything in particular which might have changed in jobs, but the very character of work has changed, and that changes everything. Like, not like, oh yeah.
But well, I mean, do you think that in 2100 people will work the same way that they do today? Or like, because you were right I feel you were very right to ask this exact question. If we're just thinking about the jobs we have today, just, you know, forwarding them into the future, or about the future job market in itself. And I don't know, in 100 years from now, how will people work? What do you think?
So if we have the quantum Pareto optimization, people won't work anymore.
Or the whole thing with like doing all this micro work for an AI, like labeling data and all of that stuff that's happening right now. We never get rid of it, and like just huge swaths of the population are just feeding that big AI machine, just like pressing like, oh, this is now this category, this is this category, and just doing like very stupid labeling work. But that's feeding like the well-being algorithm.
I think that's like the most dystopian future I've heard like ever.
But I mean, this is also an extrapolation from the present, right? Because I mean, we have those click workers and the big tech companies sell it as if the AI engine would work so well, but in fact, it's all people behind it.
Yeah.
But this would be a quite dystopian outlook.
Well,
so but what is desirable?
I think
in what kind of world would you want to live?
What I would wish for would be, and I think it will probably take another at least, I don't know, 30 to 40 years before we could be there, is a form of like, how do you call it, like a separation of the work week into 4 different parts. It's going back to a female sociologist called Frigga Haug, and she invented this 4-in-1 perspective. So there are 2 days of a work week for work, like making money. Then there's 1 day for political work, 1 day for cultural work, and another one for social work, like, you know, looking after elders and everything like that. And for me, that would be something very desirable in the future.
But really, like, divided in different days?
Yeah, like, I mean, you probably could decide on what days you want to work or not, but like, just for exemplary purposes, maybe Monday and Tuesday you work like a job thing, and then on Wednesday you go into I don't know, or you look after like children or elderly people, go and help them with their shopping or anything. And maybe on Thursday you go to some community political discussion, or like these, I don't know the English term for it, but Bürgerräte, like participatory,
like councils or
yeah,
something.
exactly, yeah, like some form of participatory political, you know, action in some way. And then on Friday maybe you work in a theater play, and, you know, do some acting or help with the stage or anything. Yeah, so something like that. And everything is considered being work, right? Because everything is sort of like benefiting yourself and your community. So that would be maybe something desirable, I think, for me at least.
I think it sounds very organized. I don't know. What do you think?
Well,
maybe
I would be happy to do it, because like I would enjoy the alterations, like doing something different on every and each other day. But I don't know how the other persons in this breakout room feel about it.
I mean, imagining that be the case in 2100, life would be like that. What would you say to your being now? Wow, cool, it's so great. Or, oh my God, I feel so restricted. Or I don't know. What's your take? Is this something desirable?
Well, I think I at least like working on something continuously. Like, I like to have like this one thing that I do for like a couple of days or weeks or months. But I also think that, I don't know, I think it would be nice if like everybody had to do like some care work or like some social work. So everybody would have like this experience of taking care of somebody. I think that might change everybody a little bit, and that maybe change the whole thing as a whole. So it's interesting to think about it.
Like for me, I think it wouldn't be about how much we'd have to work, but rather like, do we have to work with regards, like, is your survival dependent upon that? As like a dignified human being, not living in abject poverty. And then how did specifically technology, but also developments like, for example, climate change and geopolitics and everything, how did they influence, like, what kind of control we as a society have over our, like, we as a society about, okay, what do we actually want to produce, what kind of jobs are there, etc. But then as individuals and as teams on like the organizational level, okay, how much control do you have over your individual activity? And I mean, you could probably very well imagine like there's just like a big AI planned economy at some point where like which is completely divorced from any human decision-making input, but it's like all watched over by the loving grace of machines. Or what's the saying? Like with the uncorp quantum well-being thing that you had, Isabella, where it's like mommy AI is watching over you. She just wants the best for you, but like you don't have, like, you cannot even say no anymore. You literally have no control over it. But how do you pair like something like that with, okay, no, there's like feedback from human decision making on all scales, basically, like still that having some kind of traction. Yeah, it's a messy, I know it's like not a clear vision that I gave, but like it's just a mess of like, just, okay, this is somewhat important, I would like that and not that, and yeah.
But is the advice then, is it not to sort of like be more like the advice from the future to today's generations? Isn't it that we should be more concerned with sort of like foresighting, or at least just reflecting on what we want for work and what not? Like, you know, the coming up of AI right now with GPT and everything.
I'd say like the like what would I would probably give myself as an advice and others is like, okay, do exactly that, like do like some foresighting stuff, and okay, what kind of like on what kind of pathways might that set you, and from the future I could also somewhat identify certain leverage points which aren't as visible to me from my present me, so that I know, okay, deal with these leverage points, get them under your control as best as possible, like not under my personal control, but like, okay, with like organized democratic group of people, and like trying to make them as like what's the word, I'm missing the word right now, yeah, as open to democratic input as possible, like not letting technology off the hooks and doing its thing, but yeah.
Trying to put that down. Write that down, put that down.
And maybe also like don't isolate yourself from these technologies and from these like very dangerous and scary developments, because they happen, and they happen if you look at them or not, and later down the line they will have like drastic consequences if you want that or not. But so better like deal with that now. Yeah.
What is that, like? Don't be
stay with the trouble,
okay.
basically. Yeah. Don't run away, like don't run away. Don't
just so everybody knows, in 30 seconds the breakout sessions end. It's just in case not everybody has seen it. It's, yeah, we get kicked out in 20 seconds now.
All right.
So just for the German speakers, maybe there was on Deutschlandfunk, there was a super interesting radio feature on AI-powered economies. Maybe you find it if you.
Nice. Last people coming
So
in.
welcome back, everyone. I hope you enjoyed your trip to the future and back.
Looks like it.
So who wants to share about future jobs or future Nobel Prize laureates or the daily life of the grandparents? Phoebe?
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah. Hey. Yeah, in my group, we were group 3. So I was with Catherine and Anki, yeah. So what we were talking about was in the future of work, it could be that you don't work. So what's great about the future is you don't work, and that there's kind of a shift and a reimagination of what it means to work. So for example, you could be working in your sleep, accruing hours whilst you sleep, or it could be we were talking about kind of connecting your mind with other people's minds and how you can accrue hours in different ways, and work is based on desire, and also the term work's probably been eliminated anyway, but it's about your desires and your needs and your wants and aspirations, as opposed to feeling that you have to do something to, and it's also based on money, so it's not based on money anymore, what work is. But yeah, definitely accruing hours in your sleep would be good, and then your brain could be tapped into something with other people. Yeah, so you're talking about stuff like that. Yeah.
Perhaps
So
I can add a little bit to that, if I may. We also were talking about, yes, of course, basic income is realized. There's that's the thing about the money. Also, no jobs are perceived typically male or female anymore. I mean, nurse is still a female job, and so this is eliminated. Also, we have realized that the care work is very important. So especially education, we were talking about education. Right now, the ratio of kindergarten teachers is like 10 or 12 kids per person. And in the future, because that's really important to take care for the kids, the ratio is 3:1. And the idea that I think, Catherine, that was her name, I think, was really keen on was how might collaboration be different, like endless meetings to go for alignment and see that everybody's involved who needs to be there. So we were kind of thinking about a 3D organizational chart that you have your meeting in the metaverse, and you will always see who you need to directly contact to go the shortest way to get information or agreement or whatever you need.
So yeah, it's more about fun and not having to worry so much about money and all that annoying, cumbersome type of work and tasks are automated or eliminated or easier, streamlined. Oh, so we also talked about creative. We also talked about how the creative work might become more important, the creative types of jobs and abilities and things like that.
And is this rather something, we can, if you engage in some backcasting, might this something be we can plan or we can do something, to substitute the word work by fun? Or is it coincidentally? So can this be a process by design?
It seems like we could. I mean, if that's the direction that society wants to go, then it seems like we could. but maybe not on a grand scale. I don't know. That's like boiling the ocean.
I mean,
trying to boil the ocean.
the work in itself is like a great, big, complex system. You can't just say, now it's done differently. From now on, it's called fun. That won't work. I think it will be a slow development towards that. It's more like a mindset change. And if we backcast and design a few small steps, we might get there eventually. And in the end, it might not be called fun, but something else. But that's 70 years we're talking about. But we might be from that future able to decide upon steps towards that future.
Yeah, I agree. And also it's definitely a cultural shift and a societal shift that needs to occur, which obviously will inevitably take time. But it's more so, obviously there's development with lots of technology, and it's kind of working with the developments and putting more on the responsibilities on that in terms of the kind of more menial tasks, I guess, which give humans more time to focus on their personal desires and their drives, or what they want out of this planet, in their life on this planet. So it's building on their comments.
What I think is so interesting, because you now describing a desirable future, but you could also do it the other way around, right? Describe or think about a dystopian future and then kind of backcast what should we not do? What for example, in the other group I peeked into, it was ban GPT, chat GPT right now. So as kind of an advice from the future where AI kind of, I don't know, took over or something, which I think is also an interesting mind game, to think about, where do I come from? Do I want a desirable future, or do I rather work with the dystopian future and then think about what not to do? So, but maybe one of the other groups with another question, or maybe the same question. Is there a new Nobel Prize with a new theme?
Maybe I share, and Kelly and the other colleague, I forgot her name, sorry, can add, Ashley. So the winners of the Nobel Prize in our group is a team of activists, and they are mostly shamans, and also people who experience loss and migration in their lives. And what they did is they found a way into a very important meeting of all the most important leaders of the world, like politicians, but also leaders of big corporates, and found their way into the kitchen and put a lot of mushrooms into the soup, which led to some amazing insights and revelations in the minds of the leaders, and that kind of like changed the course of the history. Maybe Kelly and Ashley can add.
Yeah, I think the path of thinking about this was really interesting. I think one thing that I'm kind of thinking about right now is how, when you think further into the future, the way we started this was kind of an offhand joke comment of like, maybe aliens will win instead of humans. And it forces you to kind of push your imagination further, where we were like, well, yeah, maybe a human isn't winning, or what is, like, you have to make those bigger leaps, especially with what we've seen lately kind of changing. And so that was kind of getting us into the mushrooms idea. And and also getting into work and how AI is changing that, and what categories of the Nobel Prize are there in the future that may shift as well.
I guess they're also thinking about like, all right, if we have all of this, like, you know, data and information and decision-making frameworks and rational things, and we're still kind of not taking action, what would it take for people to kind of make meaningful change in this sort of area? And there was some kind of like values shifts that would need to happen, probably to do something a little more transformational.
Thank you. Any news from the grandparents? Where do they live? Can they still travel to the Netherlands in 2100? Or to the Maldives, or I don't know.
I can go on that about the grandchildren. It's that that they will describe how wonderful life in space colony is without having to worry about climate change, and that they will still keep the seasons of the year, so there is not going to be a big shift on that. So we can have spring, summer. And there is an interspecies right movement, and what else? They envy us when the times where that you have a monogamous relationship, because now relationships are more complex than that. How amazing food is. I don't know if any other member of the team wants to jump in. Peter, Johan. You're on mute, Peter.
Sorry about that. We'd have Elon Musk get the Nobel Prize for having funded the first off-world colony. And there'd be a debate in the colony about the possibility of converting it into a generation ship to go out and explore deep space.
So that's it on our end for our grandchildren in 2100.
Yeah, maybe it's possible. So I was just thinking, I always talked about the grandparents, but of course it's the grandchildren. Yeah, so great. Thank you.
I mean, maybe we can continue with the other grandchildren.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, first of all, we started off with like, that maybe was like a wake-up call to like do something now, like, because we were imagining them writing to us now in the year 2023. Maybe it was like a wake-up call, do something about the climate crisis, otherwise this and this and this will happen. But then we like went a bit crazier, talked about like teenage slang from the future. Maybe they don't even communicate via Snapchat anymore or something. Maybe they have like, here, it's time you got the telekinesis 3000, grandma, get with the times. I'm writing a letter because that's the only way to reach you. Maybe they also talk about like a trip they took like a few weeks ago, where they talk about, I don't know how you guys did it back then. Like the way we talk about people traveling like a few years ago, like how did you get around without Google Maps? They would probably be like, how did you get around without using Google Translate, which like translates every language in your ear directly. Maybe they also like don't even travel anymore, but use VR to like travel to different places because like flying is not permitted anymore. Then we thought about like extinct animals. Maybe they're like curious if like, grandma, you're so old. Did you live when there were still tigers around? We only have this robot tiger. Maybe they include like a little drawing of them and their family with the pet tiger, with the pet robot tiger.
And then the last thing we had is maybe they're asking like, oh, last time we talked, you said you needed help with your exoskeleton. Do you need me to come around and like do an update? Do you need help with anything else with your, I don't know, micro doses vitamins or something? Yeah, don't know if anybody else has something to add.
Yeah, so just a little bit. So VR technology has really gone up. So they can be in Paris one day, they can be in Melbourne the next, just through VR. And it's not just the places, but they can also go back in time. So they can go to like Paris in the 1900s or something like that. And VR sort of seeped into all education as well. So instead of just reading books and everything, they sit and experience all of that and whatnot. And we touched upon food as well. So like mom's really busy in the lab trying to keep the mango production from collapsing. So like the concept of food has also evolved where everything's now in labs as opposed to out in the real world. Yeah.
Also, on a slightly more dystopian note, I thought about the possibility that maybe when that letter is being sent, it might hint that there are things that the sender would like to put in the letter, but that the AI filter won't allow to be expressed in a digital communication.
This is again kind of this ban ChatGPT now thing, right? Kind of the dystopian idea. Yeah, thank you. I mean, do you have any more feedback on the whole undertaking? Franziska, what do you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, I'm so much amazed how everybody of you was so willing and creative to take part in this futuring thing, and that somehow these questions work quite well in order to come up with stories from the future and with parts of these letters, and even with these very small tiny bits like how relationships might have developed, or the food or the slang or so. And of course also how climate politics were dealt with, and also how even strange neuropsychological things happened. Well, I can say I'm very, very happy about everyone of you joining us and having this kind of conversation. And I mean, we can as it would have been in analog time, we will leave the room open for a bit. So if there's anything else that comes to your mind, anything that you would still like to talk about with us, please do so. Yeah, and otherwise, of course, many thanks for joining us from many different parts of the world, and have a really good time where you are. And in case you would like to know anything more about the book or so, please write us, because we are all happy to send you a copy of it. An ebook copy, of course, I have to say. Yeah.
Thank you, Franziska. I think before we close officially, there's a big round of applause due, even in a digital way, for you two, Isabella and Franziska. Thank you for this amazing session tonight. So
oh, that's so kind. But please also thank you for the amazing people at Ellery Studio for having us and hosting us and coming up with very, very good technological ideas and skills and gadgets. That was so helpful. And also thanks for organizing and doing the PR and the Eventbrite.
Yeah, and keep on thinking, what should I not do that the dystopian future will not come true, and what should I do that the desirable future will come true? So maybe this is kind of the positive and negative backcasting exercise. Thank you for joining.